So welcome everyone to today's session of our Jet Reports Success webinar series. I think we're now in our fifth one, I want to say. A quick introduction. I've done a couple of these before. My name is Brian Robinson. I'm a training and reporting consultant here at Jet Reports out of lovely Portland, Oregon. It is turning into fall, which I am rather excited about, getting out of summer into the nice, cool, crisp air. I want to thank you for joining me for the next 20 to 30 minutes, which is all about preparing your Jet Professional reports for distribution to all of your types of users. Some of you may have run into some of the errors we'll come across. Some of them, maybe you aren't familiar with what you need to do to get it ready for others to use. So just a little housekeeping to get it out of the way. First of all, since this is a GoToWebinar, everybody out there in the ether, you are all on mute. But if you have a question, you can always type it into the questions or the chat. I will try and keep an eye on the questions. But that said, I'm not going to stop to answer any questions. We do have a limited time. We want to make sure we get through all the content first. But if you have a question along the way, feel free to type it in. And if I don't have time to answer those at the end, or if it's a question that maybe requires a little bit more time than we have, what I'll do is I'll record an answer to those questions and include it with the recording. Speaking of the recording, once this session is complete and ready for sharing, we're going to make it available to everyone in our knowledge base or on the page where you initially signed up, so if you have that bookmarked. But you can always go out to our knowledge base and search for the keywords of Success Webinar, and you will find a fantastic page with this recording as well as all the previous sessions. So if you missed any of the previous ones, you can always go back and check those out. They are fantastic. So I think that's the easiest way to find those recordings. Okay? So for today, right, why are we doing this? Well, simply put, we want you to be successful with our product. Right? People are going to use what they like to use and what they have success with. And if somebody gets frustrated with some piece of software or a product or a toy or a game, right? I'm a parent and I have two small children. I know when my son gets frustrated with the game, he wants to just quit it. So we want you to be successful and have you be successful and use our product. So it's a little bit selfish, but we want you to work with us and we want to work with you. As I mentioned, this is an ongoing series hosted on a monthly basis. It's always the second or third Thursday of the month. Our next one is scheduled for October 13th. I will be presenting again, so get to love this voice. And I'm going to present how to find and use our Jet Professional pre-built reports. One of the great things about Jet is we make it easy to get started right away because we've got 60 or 70 pre-built reports that you can download and start using. But there's a couple things you need to know before you start using those. Then on Thursday, November 9th, we have Harry, who will return to talk about some of the new and the updated features for Jet Professional 2018. By that time, Jet Professional 2018 will be released, or plans to be released, and we want you to know what's new about it and why you might want to upgrade and what cool features we've included with this version. So keep those in mind, bookmark those. If you've signed up, you'll have a nice little reminder come up for you each time you come in. So the last thing I want to do before we get into today's topic is just tell you a little bit about us, who we are, why you should be listening to me and us, right? Well, we can read this really marketing heavy description and you can see those magic keywords, right? We have unparalleled access to data and business analytics and cost effective. But what is this slide really telling you? Since 2002, Jet Reports has made it easy for over 10,000 companies in 94 countries to access their data in real time within Excel itself without having to know any complicated querying languages like SQL or MDX. So this is going to give the average user in your company access to data they didn't have before. So as for me, I've been with the company, Jet Reports here, for just over 3 years, and I genuinely have a passion for the product and teaching people how to use it. Hopefully I can get you excited about it too. Okay, so that's our goal for today. So on to today's agenda. First, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about Jet Reports user types. Right? It's important to know this differentiation between the two before we get into preparing for distribution to others, because why do we even need to do that? Okay. Then we'll start off with a business case scenario. We'll talk about some report options, running reports as a viewer, and then ways to distribute your reports. So let's start off with our different types of users. And some of you out there might have already taken some Jet Reports training. Some of you may be familiar with this, but some of you may not be familiar. So there's really 3 types of users of Jet. And the 2 in the blue, the designer and viewer, are those people within your company that actually have Jet Professional installed on their machine, right? They've installed Excel, they've installed the Jet add-in. Then we have the Excel user, and we'll get to them in a moment. Hopefully everybody that is attending this is a designer. Right? Designers are the people that are going to create reports and modify reports, and you can open reports and refresh reports. Essentially, you are the super users of JET. You get to do all the fun stuff. You have access to all the tools that I have as an employee here at JET. Okay? But there is a subset of those people who have JET installed, and they are the viewers, right? Typically designers, you maybe have 1, 5, 10 designers out of a company, but the rest of the masses are going to be users or viewers. Okay? And really what they can do is they can open up a report that a designer has created and they can refresh the data. That's about the extent of what they can do. They can't change anything on the report, and if they make changes to the report, when they refresh it, they're going to lose all those changes. Maybe you've had an experience with that. Okay? So those two people have JET Professional installed, and they have different permissions. Lastly, we have the Excel user, because a designer can create a report. They can open it and refresh it and save it. A viewer could do the same thing, open it and refresh it and save it. And then we can take that, because it's just an Excel file, and we can send it off to anybody with Excel. But there's some things we're going to find that may be limiting when we just take that file if we haven't prepared it correctly, and we send it off to them, and we're going to go, oh, well, we have a broken Excel file here. Okay? So we want to take into consideration all three types of groups, and this is why it's important to know the information we're going to talk about today. Okay? So here's our use case. JET Professional is now the default reporting solution for your company. Designers, viewers, and Excel users are going to need access to your reports. Currently, the reports work for you, but they don't work for a lot of other people in your company or even outside your company. What's going wrong? Okay. So there's a couple things that we want to explore with this. So I've built this very, very simplistic report here. It's just a list of customer sales, and we can see I've built some filters up here in the top left corner that says, what is the month range I want to run this for, and what salesperson do I want to choose on this? Okay. Now, as a designer, if I want to change a value, I can go back into design, I can choose Annette as my salesperson, and I can rerun the report. There we go. But if I save this and send it off to a viewer, viewers do not have access to design mode because they're not allowed to create or manipulate reports in any way. So what's going to happen is they'll get this report and they'll come in and they say, oh, you know what? I want to know about John, JR. And they click the button, they hit enter, and it changes it here, but it doesn't really do anything. And so their first instinct is, oh, I need to refresh the report. They hit refresh, and what happens? It goes back to Annette. Because what happens is when a viewer runs a report, it goes back to the original state of the report unless we've built in some additional functionality. And the original state of the report as a designer was Annette. Okay, so any changes I make on here, I'm going to lose as a viewer when I refresh that report. But the sales manager wants to be able to change which month to run this and which salesperson. Otherwise, right now, anytime they want to change this information, guess what? They've got to come back to me as a designer to change those values, hit the report button, save it, and send it back to them. Now, I've got way too many cat videos I want to watch online to waste my time changing these values, saving a report, and running it back to them. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to make it so that viewers can change these values. So I'm going to go back into design. I have to do this as a designer, so I need to be back in design mode. And we have this new button that was introduced about 6 months ago, and some people use it and some people don't, but let's take a look at it. Report options. These are things that I want viewers to be able to change in the reports. Okay? So I'm going to click on this button, and what happens? It's going to ask me, what are your options? What are the things you want your viewers to be able to change? Both designers and viewers. Okay. So I'm going to give it a title. Well, I'm going to just use these. How about month? I'm just going to give it a title that makes sense to people. Don't just put date, maybe date range, because if I put month, maybe that implies I need a month. Maybe I put date range, right? That would be a little bit better. It doesn't have to be exactly what you have here. What value do I want to give it as a starting point? If I don't know what date range they're going to want, I might want to do one of two things. I might want to put a star, but for a date range, that could be really dangerous. My data might go back 12 years, and that says for every date that's ever occurred. Okay? So I think it's a good idea to at least give it a starting point. In this case, I'm going to start with the same date range that I started with before, August of 2017. Okay? So these are two I have to input, right? I have to put in a title. I have to give it some sort of starting value. I can't leave either of those blank. Tooltip is the next thing we can do, and we can give the user a little tooltip that pops up. So you'll notice that if I hover over one of these, or we'll see it somewhere else, as I hover over this, I might get a little tip that says, hey, do something. So I might say, enter as date, ... date, right? So they know the correct format. They don't just type in January or August or 2017, right? And we have a lookup, but we're not going to use it. There's a tooltip that I was looking for. Create a lookup function with the JFX, right? So that's what the users are going to see when they run this report. I don't think it's a good idea to do a lookup for a date range, right? So I'm going to skip over that. People can enter in dates. They don't need to look it up in the database. But I've got this other one for the salesperson. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to give this one a title of salesperson code or salesperson or whatever I want to choose. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, okay, what starting value do I want? Well, I only have 7 salespeople, so it's probably not that big a deal to put a star. I'm not going to return that many results, or maybe I just stick with AH, whatever it may be. In fact, I'm going to start with a star just to make it different than what we see up there, so we can actually see this in action. Okay? Tooltip. I don't really have a tooltip to provide with this. Maybe select a salesperson code. I don't know, nothing really fancy. So I'm going to skip over that. I don't need to do that. It is optional. But let's explore this lookup. When I click on the little ellipsis here, what that's going to do is open up the JET function wizard, or the JFX, however you want to call it. Okay. And it's pre-populated with my what. So I don't need to tell it what I want to do. It's already said you're going to do a lookup. Okay. But I do need to tell it a specific table. And as I drop this down, I've got a lot of tables. Which is the best one to choose? Well, I'm going to go to a master table of what it is that I'm looking for. In this case, I'm looking for salespeople, and maybe I don't necessarily know what table that is. So I'm just going to drop that down and start typing in the word salesperson and see what comes up. Look at that. I have 3 tables with the word salesperson in it. And so I'm going to choose the one. In this case, I have a little extra functionality that says there are 11 records in my salesperson purchaser table. That, if you don't know it in this database, is the master table of my salespeople. The only other thing I have to enter in is what field do I want them to choose from. Okay. And usually this is going to be your customer number, your vendor number, your item number, your GL account number, whatever that unique identifier is. I don't want to choose name for 2 reasons. One, names are not unique. Right? I could have many, many salespeople named Tom Jones. It wouldn't be unusual. But then I come through, and if I give you a list, I'm only going to see one Tom Jones. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to use that unique identifier. And in this case, their code is unique, whether it's a customer number, item number, GL account number, in this case, code. Now, because this is a JFX, a JET function wizard, I can apply filters. So if I maybe need to apply some filters to their region, I only need the West Coast representatives. I only need the ones that are active. I only need the ones that actually earn commission. Who knows what I need, but I can build in criteria. I can add up to 10 filters, and these are all just filters that are fields within that specific table. Okay. So I'm going to hit OK. I don't need any filters on this one. Okay. So now I've got all the information, and you can see I've got a lookup because I can delete that lookup if I want to. I don't have a lookup on my date. I've filled out the title and the value for each one of those. I'm going to go ahead and hit close. And when I hit close, what's JET going to do? JET added a whole new tab over here called options, and it added a whole bunch of content to this. So as I expand this out, we can see a little bit more. If you use JET at any point in time, right, we know that JET keywords go in column A and row 1. They are reserved for that section, and we can see the little report options added a bunch of keywords to my report. Okay? I'm not going to go into great detail as to what those are. You can certainly look those up in our knowledge base. If you type in JET keywords, you'll get a description of each one of those. But you'll notice that I have the title of my options, right? If I click back on report options, title, value, tooltip, and lookup, and those match some keywords that we see right up here. Give me the title of that filter, give me the value of that filter, and lookup and tooltip. And since I didn't do a lookup for my date range, it's blank. And since I didn't do a tooltip for my salesperson, that is blank. Okay? So what does this do? What does this enable our viewers to do that they couldn't do before? Right? We tried this out where we changed the value on our report page to JR, and that didn't work. But now when anybody runs this report, a designer or a viewer, whether you hit report or refresh, what's going to happen is they're going to be presented with this little dialog box. Here is where I can make those changes. I can see I mistyped a date. Okay, so I'm going to put my 8 in there. So now I've got a complete date. My salesperson code, it started off with that star. That's what I gave it. But this little arrow right next to it allows me to choose a different salespeople or multiple salespeople if I hold down Control and do Insert. Right, I can hit OK. I can run this report. And if we look at our option page, which gets automatically hidden when we run this report, let's unhide that sheet and take a look at what happened. It updated my salesperson code. It used to be star. Now it's all 4 of those, but it didn't really do anything on my report, right? So there's a disconnect between these two. So the last step I need to do after I create my report options page, this options page, I need to go over to my report and tell it to pull those values from over there. So it's really easy to do. We just use Excel and cell references and say, hey, the month, let's go over to our option page and grab that date range from there. To get my salesperson code, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say equals, go to my option page and grab those values there. We can see all of a sudden this switched. And now when I refresh this report, let's do all salespeople, and it should update everything correctly. There we go. We can see it passed in that star. Now I just want to see JR. I want to see John. There we go. We can see our report is updating correctly. So fantastic. We've added some functionality where viewers can now change these options at runtime. If they start messing them up too much, you can always remove the keyword of option out of column A. Or if you need to add more, you simply add more down here. And you can have, I believe up to 10 is the maximum there. 10 filters is a lot of filters. If I'm thinking about tables, I might say, I might go look at customer transactions and I need to look them up by customer or salesperson or date or type, or I'm already running out of things and I hit 4. So it's pretty easy to stay within the 10 filter limit. So that's fantastic. I've made it so it's more user friendly. There's one last step I tell everybody that they absolutely should do as a designer. The last thing you should do is pretend you are a viewer. See what happens when you take away some of your permissions and your tools. So to accomplish this, we are going to go into our application settings. And some of you maybe have never gone into our application settings, but let's explore that. I'm going to go ahead and open up my application settings. And here we are. Right on this first tab here for our general, you'll notice that there's this simulation mode. And when I drop this down, I can pretend to be a viewer, or I can even switch to a different type of Jet Express, which we're not going to get into in here. We're talking about Jet Professional here. So I'm going to pretend to be a viewer, simulate being a viewer. As soon as I hit OK, watch our toolbar. It has now changed. I'm being notified I'm simulating being a viewer. You can see I no longer have access to the design button because viewers don't have access to design. I don't have any of my design tools anymore. Again, I don't have the ability as a viewer to design reports, so that's going to be problematic. So what's going to happen is I'm going to run this report, and immediately what's going to happen is I'm going to get this error message. If you send this off without doing this last step, this is the error message that all your viewers are going to see. You don't want to send this off to your CEO and have this come up immediately. That's going to reflect poorly on your report and Jet reports and your ability to build the reports here. So what does this say? It says you're not licensed to design reports. If you are a licensed report viewer, please tell your report designer that auto plus hide plus values or auto plus hide plus lock must be in cell A1 of at least one worksheet of this report, and that the report must be saved in report mode. So that's a mouthful. Let's break it down into 2 separate parts. Let's start at the end. The report must be saved in report mode. Why? Well, since viewers only have access to report mode, I can't send them a report in design mode. I have now invited them to look at my report, but locked them out. Hey, come on over to my house, but I'm going to lock the door and you can't come in. That's essentially what we did. Okay? So we always need to make sure that as a designer, when we run our reports and save them, we need to keep it in report mode. And that makes it accessible to everybody. The other part of this is that we have to add some new keyword, plus values or plus lock. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go back into my application settings, and I'm going to stop being a viewer here. Okay. So now I have access to rerun this report, pass it in, excellent. Okay. So what are these 2 new keywords? I'm going to pull this over and let's take a look at it. We either need to add plus values or plus lock to cell A1. So it says auto plus hide plus values or auto plus hide plus lock. Okay. So what plus values will do is it will take all of our JET functions and convert them to the values they evaluated out to. Plus lock will take it one step further and it will lock that worksheet. So why do we need to do this? So let's take a look at our report. If I haven't done this stage, let me click on the customer number. And what do I see up here in the formula bar? I see equals, NL, rows, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's great for designers because we're allowed to create and modify these queries, but that's problematic for two groups of users. It's problematic for our viewers because they're not allowed to create reports or modify reports. In fact, they aren't even allowed to look at the functions that we use to create your report. It's all smoke and mirrors and magic. Don't worry about what's going on underneath the tarp here. Just know that it's magic. Okay, we built it and it's awesome. Okay. So as we come through there, we want to make sure that they don't see that. This is also going to be a huge problem for Excel users. Why? Well, does equals NL mean anything to Excel? No, it means absolutely nothing unless JET Professional is installed. If it's not installed, this whole report is going to show pound names. It's not going to understand anything of what's going on because I've got an NL rows, I've got an NL first, I've got all kinds of stuff, and it's not going to understand what's going on. Okay. So I need to make this accessible by other types of users. That's where this auto plus hide, and I'm just going to add plus values will come in. And when I run this report and click on that customer name again, or customer number again, what do we see up here? We no longer see equals NL, whatever. I just see the values they evaluate out to. Okay. Plus lock just takes it one step further, and I would lock this worksheet because if you've used JET before, you might notice that people can come in and change these numbers. Oh no, I sold Alpha Quote $10 million worth of stuff. You owe me commission on that. John, let's take a look at that again. I'm going to refresh that. Let's requery the database and figure out, nope, you sold $17,000 worth of stuff, and that's what we're going to pay commission out on. So some people are concerned about that. Another concern they have is people get upset and maybe they delete your report. Don't worry, this is just window dressing when you have that plus values, and when I rerun it, guess what? It comes right back. They didn't actually delete the report, they deleted the window dressing, and we just put the flyer back up, okay? But plus lock, some people like, I will take out plus values and put in plus lock, and we can demonstrate that when I run this report. They can still change those report options that I allowed them to change, but once it's in report mode, they can't change any cell. Now this is sheet by sheet. Okay. So I think it's a good idea as you go through to add plus values or plus lock to each of the sheets in your report because I might have multiple sheets in my report. Okay, so those are things that we want to take into consideration. Now that I've got that, maybe I go back and into my application settings, simulate that viewer mode, hit OK, and refresh it and see what happens. No error will pop up and I just get the report. Fantastic. Okay, so keep that in mind. Simulate that viewer mode, add those keywords if you didn't, and if you did already and you simulate viewer mode, it's going to work beautifully. Okay? So the last little topic that we want to talk about today is how to distribute your reports. And the nice thing about JET is that we're just creating Excel files, right? And how do you distribute Excel files? I email them to my coworkers. I maybe save them on my computer. Maybe I save them out on a network drive. I upload it to SharePoint. However you would normally distribute an Excel file is how you would distribute a JET report, right? Make sure it's saved in design or report mode and then send it off to whoever needs it. Now we do also have the web portal, and if you want to know more about the web portal, I think that's a great resource, but go back one series. The last month, Harry joined you and told you all about the web portal. So if you saw that, fantastic. You've got a great idea of what the web portal is. If you haven't, I expect that you might be really excited. This gives people a way to log in, run reports, view reports, download reports, and you can share them with different users, give different users different permissions to different reports. It's a really great report management distribution tool. So go back and watch that video. It was a half hour. I obviously don't have time to talk about that in the last 4 minutes. So since we are down to our last 4 minutes here, I see a couple questions. I'm going to see if I can get to them, but we'll see. So what did we find out today? Well, one thing we learned is the different types of users. We have report designers, report viewers, and we have Excel users, and they have different permissions. And if we want to be able to have our viewers, right, not our Excel users because they don't have Jet installed, when they hit refresh, well, they don't have the refresh button, so it can't happen. But if we want our viewers or designers to be able to change report options at runtime, we'll use that report options button. Again, it's a new one that will create that little dialogue at runtime for people to say, yes, I want to change this, I want to look up these values. We also want to make sure that we test all of our reports by simulating viewer mode, so that way we know that it's going to work for everybody. If we get that big error, we know we forgot a step, and we can go back and fix that before we distribute it out. And lastly, since we are just creating Excel files, we can distribute them however you want, whether it's email or uploading or putting out on our network drive or even our fantastic Jet web portal. Okay, so we're down to about 3 minutes. I'm going to just double check our questions here. And I think one of them happened to do with my date. In fact, I cannot, there we go, let's make this bigger. October 13 is Friday. All right, so we mean October 12th. Look at that, I messed up. October 12th is our next session, not Friday the 13th. So we're gonna avoid that. Somebody asked, what version of Jet are you using? You're running 2017 and do not have the report options in the design tool. So I am on the most current version. If I go to my About, you can see I'm on 2017 release 3, but I believe it came up in release 2. If you do not see the report options button, what you can always do is you can go to your application settings, go to your Jet ribbon, and maybe somebody has turned it off. So I can come in here and I can actually turn off the report option. So double check that, make sure that's not it. If you don't see an option to turn that on, that means you need to upgrade to a newer version. And I will try and find out which version exactly introduced the report options. I just don't remember off the top of my head what that is. Okay. And could you please advise if this training is relevant for Jet Essentials? If yes, to what extent? That's a great question, Vlad. Jet Essentials is now called Jet Professional, right? We have Jet Express and we have Jet Professional. Jet Express is our free version out there. And this training really does not pertain to Jet Express in any way, shape, or form. You don't have the report options button, and all users are viewers and designers, but you have very, very limited tool set there. Okay. So Vlad, if you're on 2012, right? It's still called Jet Essentials back then. I think it was 2016 when we changed the name to Jet Professional to more align with our view of how we see ourselves there. And if you put Jet reports on your network drive, are there issues that arise with multiple people being in the report at the same time? Yes. If somebody has the report open and somebody else tries to open the report, they're only going to be able to open it in read-only mode. So they won't be able to really do anything with it. So yes, that is a concern for that. So email is a fantastic way to do it. If you know only a select few people are going to access that report and they're never really doing it at the same time, putting it on network drive is great. Or explore your web portal. I think those are two great options for you. So I think I got through all the questions there. If you have any follow-ups, reach out to our team and we will be glad to answer that for you. In the meantime, that brings us to the end of our time together. I want to thank you for joining me. I have a couple resources here I just put so you can pause the video and look up these things. We've got information about how to use the report options with the Jet Excel add-in, and we've also got simulating, well, this says Jet Express, but just choose the viewer mode instead of Express, just like we did in this session. So thank you once again. Hopefully we'll see you next month. Until then, happy report writing and have a fantastic weekend. There were two questions that came up at the end of our session that I just didn't have time to research and answer right away. So I'm going to go ahead and answer those in this video. And to answer both of them, I'm going to use the knowledge base, which is a fantastic resource for things that you might want to know about the product. The two questions were, what version did the report options button become a part of Jet Professional? Now I know that was Jet Professional release 2017 R2, but when was that released? I don't know. The other question was, what is the oldest version of Navision that is available for usage with Jet Professional 2017? So the first one I'm going to say is, well, when was Jet Professional 2017 R2 released? If you type in release notes into our knowledge base, you'll find that there is release notes for Jet Professional, and within here you will find different builds and releases, their dates, what was added or changed within the add-in, the web portal, any of our components, you'll find that, and sometimes you'll actually find videos describing what those things were. Now, if I go back, I know it was released in Jet Professional 2017 R2. We can find it was released February 7th, 2017, and we get some general overview of some of the new things that were introduced. Now, the other question was, again, what is the oldest version of nav that is compatible with my version of Jet? Well, if you type in requirements, you will find that you have different requirements, and we want to look at software requirements for Jet Professional. So I'm going to type in Jet Professional to narrow down, and here we go, requirements and technical specs. As we look at this, here's the most current version, and you can see Microsoft Dynamics Nav 5.0 is the oldest version that is supported through our SQL connector, but we also go back to 4.0 SP1 through that using a different Windows. And so there's lots of different things that might come into play. You just need to kind of take a look at them and see what they are. You can also look at older versions down below and what the requirements are for each one. So hopefully that answers everyone's question. Hopefully you'll make it back next month for the next session. Until then, have a great week.